Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to give it another minute to let other attendees log on. Just hang tight. All right, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to any of you who are joining us from the eastern states. Welcome to today's webinar, Enhancing Cognitive Health in Older Adults. My name is Renata and I'm an Injury Prevention Officer here at Injury Matters and for the Stay on Your Feet program. We are pleased to be hosting today's webinar with Dr. Jamie Tait, who will present insights from the latest evidence in exercise and cognition training. If you didn't register for the webinar but joined through a forwarded link, you won't be able to access all the features such as chat. So if you could register for the webinar through our website, that would be great. Okay. So before we begin, please let me acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which Injury Matters works, and recognise the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's continuing connection to land, waters and community across Western Australia and Australia. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. Few housekeeping points to note before we start. So you should all be muted, so please make sure that your microphones are. That'll just allow our presenter to be heard clearly. We've scheduled some time for questions, so please send them through the chat as we go. And if you have more than one person in the room with you listening in today, we'd really appreciate just sending us a quick private message through the chat tab to let us know how many. If you face any technical issues during the presentation, please write them in the chat box and we'll do our best to help you. I have Rachel helping me out here today. And lastly, the webinar will be recorded and links and notes will be provided at the end of the session today. So at Injury Matters, we work with people and organisations across Western Australia to innovate and deliver injury prevention and recovery solutions. Solutions that keep people safer and healthier at home, at work and on the go. Solutions that save lives and make our community stronger. Our approach is as expansive and inclusive as our remit, which spans from road safety to trauma recovery and falls to substance-related harm. As a not-for-profit organisation, we work with local communities, industry, government, and our health emergency and social service partners. Drawing on the latest research, evidence and lived experiences here in WA. Our three programs aim to raise awareness of injury risks, consequences and solutions. We also aim to prevent injuries through a range of education and support programs and to support the recovery of people, families and communities who are impacted by injury and trauma. We work to advise and enable local and national agencies and policymakers to make smarter, safer and more informed policy decisions to support the needs of the community we work alongside. Together, we find and share injury prevention, recovery and policy solutions that keep everyone safer and healthier. Solutions that reduce the far-reaching physical, emotional and financial impact caused by injuries and trauma. So for today, just a quick overview. We'll go through the Stay on Your Feet program very briefly and the impact of falls. And then I'll be pleased to hand over to our guest presenter, Dr. Jamie Tait. And at the end, we'll have questions and answers. So this training is brought to you through our Stay on Your Feet program with the support of the Department of Health in WA. The Stay on Your Feet program provides information, training and support to older adult community members and professionals working with older adults on how to prevent falls in the community. Stay on Your Feet has 3 key messages that we can use throughout our campaigns and community and workforce engagement. These 3 messages are move your body, improve your health, and remove hazards. And this is where we get the overarching move, improve, remove slogan. So we know that 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 will experience a fall in each year, and that falls are the leading cause of injury, hospitalisation and death in Australia, with 43% of injury hospitalisations and 42% of injury deaths being caused by falls. The 2024 WA Falls Report was released earlier this year and highlights that in Western Australia, someone dies every 17 hours, is hospitalised every 16 minutes, and presents to the emergency department every 12 minutes due to a falls injury. And in the period from 2017 to 2021, there has been a 53% increase in the number of falls fatalities, which highlights that falls are a major public health issue. Today's webinar will focus on the role of cognition in falls, the difference between and benefits of sequential and simultaneous exercise, and gain insight into the PACET intervention with practical recommendations for applications with older adults in a community setting. Dr. Jamie Tait is a lecturer in exercise and sports science at Deakin University and is a member of the Institute for Physical Activity and Nutrition. His research explores the impact of ageing and chronic conditions on cognitive performance, well-being and inflammatory biomarkers, highlighting the transformative benefits of exercise. Jamie's work spans diverse populations, including older adults, clinical patients and military personnel. Jamie is also a member of the Physical Activity and Nutrition for Cognition and Mental Health Research Group, which focuses on informing and developing optimal nutrition and physical activity strategies to optimise mental health and cognitive function across the lifespan. So now I'd like to welcome Dr. Jamie Tait.
All right. Thanks, Renata, for the very warm welcome. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Just let me know if you can't. So yes, good morning, everyone, or for those in the eastern states like me, good afternoon. And so my name is Dr. Jamie Tait. I'm a lecturer in exercise and sports science at Deakin University. I'm also a researcher within the Institute for Physical Activity and Nutrition. So as Renata quite eloquently described, my research looks at the impact of aging on cognitive function, well-being and inflammation, and the ability of exercise to improve health in older adults and those with chronic pain. So I'm really excited to share the latest research on exercise and cognitive training and how this can help boost cognitive health in older adults. Now, in line with the latest research in the field, today's webinar will spotlight an intervention I had the opportunity to be a part of, the PACET study, and explore the powerful impact of this unique exercise intervention in older adults. So as life expectancy in Australia increases, we need to find strategies that can enhance our quality of life so that we not only live, but live well and maintain our health and independence into the future. Now, age-related cognitive decline can reduce our ability to perform daily activities, can lower quality of life, and increase dementia risk. Now, I'm sure the statistics on the bottom of the slide may be familiar to some of you in the audience today. So when we talk about cognitive decline, we are referring to the declines in the way your brain functions in terms of speed, quality, and quantity. And what we have seen are that there are these age-related changes in brain structures. We've also observed that there are some cognitive abilities are more susceptible to aging. And as you can see on the graph on the right side of the screen, put the laser up here. The abilities seem to be more affected of functions concerning memory, how quickly you can process information, react to different things in your environment, and also your ability to multitask. Now, in general, this can hinder everyday tasks such as climbing stairs, rising from a chair or getting dressed, while also elevating the risk of falls and dementia, both of which Renata also just described before, are associated with an increased risk of premature mortality. So how is age-related cognitive decline connected to falls? Well, one major contributor is dual tasking. Now, if you've never heard this term before, dual tasking is essentially multitasking. We all do it every day, whether it's talking on the phone while cooking dinner, carrying groceries through a crowded shopping centre, or balancing a tray of coffees on our way back to the office. And if any of you have ever experienced this situation, this is Flinders Street, or the corner of Flinders Street and Swanston Street in the city. It's an absolute mess. It's a dual tasking nightmare. So how does this affect older adults? Well, as we age, our capacity for multitasking or dual tasking diminishes. Now, older adults often struggle to allocate enough attention for multitasking, such as crossing a road while talking, or as illustrated in the video, walking a dog while conversing, which can lead to injurious falls. So why is this? Well, a decline in multitasking and the ability to plan and strategize can result in postural instability, impaired gait, and also difficulty with daily activities like climbing stairs, all of which can increase the risk of falls. Now, these impairments, along with traditional risk factors like slow walking speed, frailty, and poor vision, are strong predictors of future falls. So is there any good news? Bit of doom and gloom so far, but absolutely. And exercise is now considered a form of medicine, an environmental factor that extends both lifespan and health span due to its numerous benefits for a variety of health outcomes, as we can see with the shopping list of benefits on the slide there. Now, health span refers to the length of time an individual lives in good health, free from chronic disease or significant physical or cognitive impairment. So exercise increases the amount of time we're actually living for, and also this health span. But exercise can also enhance cognitive health and function, which we're going to explore over the presentation. So we've just mentioned that exercise supports cognitive health, but what does the research say about its impact on cognitive function? Well, first, as we can see on the screen there, longitudinal studies have shown that engaging in regular physical activity and exercise over several years provides numerous benefits for brain health, including a lower risk of developing dementia, lower risk of cognitive decline, and improved cognitive function across various domains. But more specifically, structured exercise programs involving aerobic exercise, resistance training, or even a combination of these can yield significant cognitive benefits in older. In fact, a relatively recent meta-analysis indicates that various exercise formats performed at moderate intensity for about 45 to 60 minutes can significantly enhance cognitive domains such as executive function, attention, and memory compared to a control group. Now, this is consistent with research dating all the way back to the 1980s, which first reported that aerobic exercise could enhance cognition. And what this review really highlights is that multiple exercise types can benefit a number of different cognitive domains, which is really good news, with combined modalities potentially amplifying these benefits. However, the extent of these effects really does differ depending on the specific type of exercise. So how much exercise do we actually need to improve cognitive function? Well, this recent meta-analysis provides valuable insights into what's called the dose-response relationship of different exercise forms, although its conclusions are not definitive, but a very good starting point. So instead of diving into the specifics of the table, what I'd like to focus on are these rectangles, which show the optimal amounts of exercise necessary for achieving maximum benefits, or in the case of this study, clinically significant improvements. Now, what this really shows is that the optimal amounts differ depending on the type of exercise, with the data suggesting that 175 minutes of moderate intensity walking may provide similar benefits as just 70 minutes of combined aerobic and resistance training per week. So the main takeaways from this study really are, or were, that any level of exercise can benefit cognitive health. So you might have heard that any physical activity is better than none. Absolutely true. But the required amounts really do vary by type. But this study showed that to achieve clinically significant cognitive improvements, we should aim for about 180 minutes of moderate intensity activity each week, which is quite an achievable goal. So while we've discussed how exercise can improve cognition, it's important to recognize that not all types of exercise have the same effect on cognitive function and functional outcome, such as preventing falls. For example, aerobic and resistance training can boost cognitive function, with physical activity guidelines for aerobic exercise coincidentally aligning with that 180 minutes we just talked about that are required for optimal cognitive benefits. However, when it comes to improving dual task ability, functional outcomes, and reducing falls, it's been shown that balance, functional, or power training is really more effective. Conversely, although balance and functional training are highly effective in reducing falls risk and enhancing physical function, particularly when incorporated into programs with over 3 hours of training each week, they do not deliver the same cognitive benefits as aerobic exercise or resistance training. Now, this suggests that combining various exercise types may be required to attain cognitive and physical improvements. However, the question we have to ask ourselves is it really practical for older adults, particularly those at risk of falls, to commit to a weekly routine of more than 3 hours that includes all of these activities? A lot of different specialties, a lot of different techniques we have to master, and a lot of time we have to put aside. Can we find a more efficient approach to achieve these benefits? And the good news is that there may be a better exercise format. Now, research indicates that both exercise and cognitive activities, like remembering word lists or completing crosswords, can significantly lower the risk of cognitive impairment and dementia while enhancing cognitive function in older adults. Now, these benefits really do stem from their ability to reduce cardiovascular risk factors, reshape brain structure and function, and enhance growth factors while decreasing inflammation. However, the effects of cognitive training alone have been quite inconsistent, and they've left us with these questions as to whether any improvements through cognitive training can actually translate into everyday tasks, such as walking and talking. So this idea of dual tasking, or can it help us to actually remember a shopping list, i.e., or for example, does it actually translate to everyday life? But what if we could combine these training modalities for even greater results? Now, what would this innovative approach entail, and what does the latest research reveal about its effectiveness? Well, there's now an emerging body of evidence which suggests that combining cognitive and physical training could attenuate cognitive decline and enhance cognitive performance in older adults. Now, while this presentation really does focus on healthy older adults, these results and sometimes even more pronounced effects have been also demonstrated in adults with cognitive impairment or even dementia. But my presentation will really just focus on healthy older adults because that's where the majority of the evidence has been reported. So there are now two main approaches to combined training: sequential training, which you can see on the left here, where exercise and cognitive tasks are done at separate times. So for example, you might do a 30-minute aerobic workout followed by computerized memory exercises later on in the session or even later on in the week. So they're sequenced at different times throughout the week. Also, simultaneous dual task training. This is the other type, where physical activities like aerobic, resistance, balance, or even stepping training are performed at exactly the same time as cognitive or motor tasks, such as solving puzzles or carrying or manipulating objects. Now, example of this may be solving math problems while walking on a treadmill, as we can see in this picture on the screen here. Now, more advanced versions may even integrate physical, motor, and cognitive exercises simultaneously, which may seem a bit tricky, but I'll show you a few examples of that later on. Now, this simultaneous training is especially promising because it mimics real-world activities and may improve daily function. However, as we'll see, the optimal type, dosage, and benefits of each training modality still need more clarity. So what advantages does this combined exercise cognitive training format offer for cognitive function? Well, an initial review revealed that a combination of exercise and cognitive training delivers greater cognitive benefits compared to passive controls or just exercise alone, although it does not outperform cognitive training on its own. Now, these findings have been echoed by subsequent reviews, but they often do not separate the effects of sequential and simultaneous training types, which we saw on the screen before, were quite distinct. Now, as a result, questions remain about which method is more effective and how this overall combined approach can impact specific cognitive domains. So as I just mentioned, a key limitation of some reviews is their failure to differentiate between these simultaneous and sequential types. And this is really important to distinguish this because each has unique training components. And this oversight means that the benefits of combined training really don't accurately represent the specific advantages of either method. And it's a bit like you're comparing apples to oranges, really. Now, in 2017, I authored one of the pioneering reviews on this topic, which found the simultaneous training generally provides more consistent cognitive benefits than sequential training. Now, fast forward to 2021, and a meta-analysis actually confirmed this via statistical analysis, demonstrating that simultaneous training outperforms sequential training in enhancing overall cognition compared to passive controls. Now, so far we've established that this combined exercise cognitive training is more beneficial for cognitive function than no activity or just exercise alone. We've also discussed that simultaneous training may be the best option, but which cognitive domains are most impacted? And another question we could ask ourselves is, are there variations of this simultaneous dual task training that can also improve functional outcomes, such as power, mobility, or even falls prevention? For instance, high velocity resistance training, which is known for some cognitive benefits, could also enhance functional outcomes, yet its role in dual task exercise has not really been explored. Now, when it comes to specific cognitive benefits, meta-analyses indicate that combined training leads to significant improvements in a whole host of different abilities regarding executive functions. That's our ability to plan, strategize, multitask, think abstractly. Can also improve working memory, ability to think or retain bits of information for shorter periods of time, and also improves attention, language processing speed, and a few other different cognitive areas compared to controls with small to medium effects. So as you can see, just quite small or smallish to medium effects. When we compare combined training to exercise alone, we see significant improvements in executive function, memory and processing speed. However, as we can see, some of those initial advantages compared to controls have already begun to diminish. And in fact, when we compare combined training to cognitive training alone, there are only marginal benefits for executive function. Now, while combined training doesn't seem to outperform targeted cognitive training across most domains, it's important to remember that this study, like a few others before it, didn't differentiate between the various training types, so it is still a bit murky. However, the fact that this combined training can enhance multiple cognitive domains is actually quite significant and important, as each domain, as you can see in the figure here, is tied to specific brain areas. For instance, executive function primarily involves the prefrontal cortex, while working memory engages both the frontal and parietal lobes down here. Now, this indicates that combined training could enhance neuroplasticity and overall brain function across various regions. And overall, this promotes better cognitive health and daily functioning. But despite these findings, there are still lingering questions in the dual task literature that need to be addressed. Namely, what are the best exercise types to incorporate into a simultaneous dual task program? What is the optimal dosage for this training? We talked before about what the optimal dosage for, traditional straightforward exercise may be. But what is it for this dual task? Do we need less? Do we need more? And additionally, how does this simultaneous dual task training that includes other modalities like power training and functional balance, how can that impact like a range of different health outcomes such as cognitive function, quality of life, and physical function. These are the answers we still need to address. Well, the questions we need to address, sorry. So to address some of these questions, during my PhD, I managed the PACEIT study, an 18-month cluster randomized control trial, exercise intervention, which was designed to prevent falls and improve cognition and well-being. Now today, I'll be focusing on the 6-month exercise intervention phase. Now, it's important to note that this study was conceived in 2013 by a team of researchers, including Professor Rob Daly, Professor Keith Hill, Professor Dennis Taft, Professor Carol Nelson, as you can see on the right side of the screen. Now, while they didn't have the evidence I've just shared to fully support their rationale at that time, you'll see that their approach was indeed on the right track. So for PACEIT, we recruited 300 older adults aged 65 years and over who were at increased risk of falls and independently living in 22 retirement villages. So half the villages were randomly allocated to an exercise intervention and then half to a control group. Now, the 6-month exercise program involved two main components, functional power and balance training, and the simultaneous performance of a secondary attention-demanding cognitive or motor task. As we now know, this is referred to as simultaneous dual task exercise. And therefore, participants performed functional exercises that resembled normal daily activities such as squats or lunges, with an emphasis on explosive or high velocity movements, which to really create and feed into that whole idea of power training. At the same time, they also completed cognitive tasks like anagrams or spot the difference exercises, or motor tasks such as throwing a disc while balancing on a Swiss ball. So group-based classes were individualized and conducted twice a week on site at retirement villages for 45 to 60 minutes per session under the supervision of qualified trainers. So the primary aim of my PhD was to determine the effect of a 6-month dual-task functional power training program on cognitive function, quality of life, and also inflammatory markers. But I'll also be showing some functional outcomes today. So this is the structure of the 6-month dual-task functional power training program. So the initial 2 weeks really focused on teaching participants basic exercise principles and techniques and emphasizing the importance of movement speed while keeping intensity low. So introducing simple balance exercises and functional exercises such as lunges, as we can see on the screen there. The second phase included a skill phase to enhance muscle strength, balance, and mobility, followed by a phase targeting the recovery of balance. Now, notably during this phase, secondary tasks were added, such as performing ball squats, while completing visual tasks like spotting differences in the Abbey Road album cover. For those of you who are looking at this and trying to work out where the differences are, it's a bit small, but, you know, Volkswagen's a different color for a start. I think there might be, I think the Beatles are all, that's pretty consistent. Anyway, the third phase aimed to maximize muscle power and challenge balance-related sensory and motor systems before progressing functional power and dual task exercises. For example, in this phase, participants performed dynamic lunges on a Duradisc while recalling a shopping list. So really creating that extra challenge and increasing complexity. In the final phase, this focused on optimizing muscle power while introducing multi-dual task exercises to enhance speed of movement, functional performance, and mobility. For instance, participants performed squats on a Bosu ball while doing bicep curls and also solving anagrams. So to address the study aims, we assessed cognitive function via computerized test battery, looking at domains that deteriorate with aging. We also collected an array of other data related to muscle strength, power, and function, and also blood samples to look at the response of different biomarkers to exercise. And this is what it looks like when you put it all together. And as you can see in this example, in these examples here, there is an emphasis on performing the concentric phase rapidly. So in the top left, a participant is doing step-ups while solving an anagram, while the top right shows a participant performing jump squats and memorizing a word list. In the bottom left, we see more advanced exercises, and these would have been introduced in the final weeks of the program, because they involve increased resistance and also complexity. So this participant performed step-ups with bicep curls as a secondary motor task, whilst also solving anagrams, so a secondary cognitive task. This would be referred to as like multi-dual tasking. So pretty good effort, that one. Similarly, the individual at the bottom right is squatting on an uneven surface while throwing a medicine ball and reciting men's names that begin with a particular letter, showcasing even a higher level of difficulty than this gent up the top. It's important to note that the exercises were progressed throughout the program and tailored to individual capacity. So here are examples of our functional balance and mobility training, showcasing highly functional and familiar activities. So in the top left, a participant is performing a balance task while carrying a ball on a mat, which is quite similar to carrying a tray of coffees across a room. And the bottom left shows a challenging tandem walking task on a balance beam while balancing an egg on a spoon. This is further progressed with the addition of an unstable surface here, as we can see in the center, while on the far right, there's a variation of functional balance training incorporating an additional motor task. So we implemented the exercise intervention and then assessed its impact on a wide range of health outcomes. And let me share some of these findings with you. So first, we assessed cognitive function using the computerized assessment tool CogState. And on the right side of the screen, why is that? Anyway, that's gone off. And on the right side of the screen, you can see examples of these tests in action. At least you should be able to. Here we go. Here we go. Our main findings showed that after 6 months, the dual task intervention led to significant improvements in attention and reaction time, as well as a composite score that included processing speed, reaction time, and attention where compared to the control group. So processing speed is how quickly we can recognize and process information in our immediate environment. Reaction time is how quickly we can respond to stimuli and choose a correct response. And also attention is our ability to maintain attention and concentration for particular periods of time. So from a clinical standpoint, these improvements are significant, as these enhancements in reaction time and attention could potentially delay cognitive decline by 7 to 10 years compared to typical progression, helping individuals maintain their cognitive abilities longer and postponing age-related decline. However, these benefits were not related to changes in inflammatory or neurological markers or influenced by genotype. So we found no significant changes in inflammation, neurological markers, or growth factors post-training. However, there was a slight reduction in plasma levels of the protein amyloid beta 40. Now, elevated levels of amyloid beta 40 in cerebrospinal fluid and the plasma can increase inflammation and contribute to the formation of senile plaques, which is a key factor in Alzheimer's disease pathology. Now, interestingly, the training group also showed an increase in amyloid beta 42, which is a protein related to cognitive decline. This is actually more of a positive finding. But however, there's limited research on the impact of exercise on these proteins, so our findings might indicate improved clearance of amyloid beta 40, which could potentially mitigate cognitive decline. However, a lot more research needs to be done to validate these hypotheses. So here's a sneak peek at our unpublished data on the functional measures we assessed. Just keep in mind that these findings are all preliminary. So dual task cost, which you can see on the right of the screen here and in this figure here, dual task cost refers to the decline in performance when individuals try to do 2 tasks simultaneously, like walking while talking, compared to doing each task separately. So for example, in our study, as you can see up the top here, participants walked along a 16-foot mat while counting backwards by 7s. So following training, dual task cost was reduced in the training group, which indicates that the counting had less impact on their walking speed. We also observed a 7% increase in lower limb power and slight improvements in functional mobility measured by the 4-square step test. And this was achieved using only body weight, weight vests and rubber tubing for resistance, so a reduced load compared to other protocols. Participants also showed a minor reduction in reaction time when responding to stimuli and stepping on designated arrows on a mat. So overall, our findings suggest that this dual task functional power training may enhance functional capacity. Now, collectively, the improvements in reaction time, attention, and mobility, coupled with increased lower limb power, may help older adults navigate and react to unexpected obstacles. Now, this increased ability may enable them to correct a misstep or regain or recover balance, ultimately helping to turn a trip to convert what could be a fall into a trip or a stumble, or allowing them to regain their balance and ultimately helping to prevent falls. So to summarize the outcomes, our 6-month intervention yielded substantial benefits for the exercise group compared to that usual care control group. So usual care, as we mentioned before, just means they went about their daily activities. No special intervention or anything like that. So we also already mentioned the exercise group exhibited significant improvements in reaction time and attention, key abilities that, as we discussed earlier, are particularly vulnerable to aging. The training group reported enhanced perceptions of their physical health and overall quality of life. They felt that their physical health and emotional challenges had less impact on their ability to carry out their daily activities. Now, notably, our study marks the first dual task research to assess the impact of such training on quality of life. We also observed those improvements in lower limb power, mobility, and response times, which could help older adults navigate obstacles and reduce fall risk. But despite this, while the exercise group experienced a 70% decrease in the likelihood of multiple falls, there were no significant differences in overall fall rates, risk of falls, or serious falls. Importantly, the intervention had no serious adverse events, although compliance was slightly below average. So collectively, these benefits could lead to greater independence, allowing individuals to continue engaging in daily activities such as driving and shopping, while also improving overall well-being and potentially reducing the risk of cognitive decline. So just to conclude, I'd just like to highlight a few key insights and potentially actionable strategies for enhancing the health and well-being of older adults through this form of exercise. So first, this dual task functional power training was safe and well tolerated, and enhanced cognitive domains crucial for maintaining functional independence, which could potentially reduce the risk of cognitive decline. Now, this low-cost dual-task exercise can be implemented in community centres, retirement villages, or even aged care facilities, but it does require support and buy-in from facility managers or even advocates for better health, so champions for better health. We were fortunate enough to have the complete backing of one of the operations managers at one of the retirement communities who truly believed in our goals and actively encouraged their individual villages to take part in our program. So ensuring the safety of participants during training was also a key factor, and for this reason, we employed accredited exercise physiologists and experienced Cert 3 and 4 trainers to oversee the sessions. We really feel this was essential to enhance motivation and monitor adverse events. We also felt that group training can significantly boost motivation and enjoyment. We removed one of the key barriers to exercise participation for older adults, which is accessibility to suitable facilities, by conducting the sessions on-site at retirement villages. To enhance morale and motivation, we also introduced prizes for completing exercises and even held friendly contests in a newsletter. We also empowered participants by giving them more autonomy in selecting their own music and even exercises. And it's really important to start dual task exercises gradually. So begin with individual exercises to master techniques before integrating these cognitive and motor tasks. This was essential for us as we were implementing high velocity resistance training, which really demands proper technique and consistent movement speed, and balance training, which can also be quite tricky, especially when you're starting out. In our study, some participants began incorporating secondary tasks in week 3, but the majority really started to introduce these in week 7 to 8. So this approach really not only reduces injury risk, but also maximizes training benefits and enhances adherence and motivation. And finally, it's really important to recognize that older adults, and a lot of us in the audience today are probably well aware of this, probably the majority of us, it's important to recognize that older adults are often much more resilient and capable than many people realize. And this project really highlighted to me that we can safely challenge older adults in meaningful ways, push them past their perceived limitations, and these can lead to remarkable benefits from the training that could potentially be ongoing. And these benefits are often extend beyond what we can represent in a journal article or even on a graph. We're talking about these anecdotal evidences to, how a training or how exercise has improved their lives in ways which will never be captured in any type of scientific manuscript. So thanks a lot, everyone, for listening today and tuning in, and also happy training, and happy to take any questions if you have them. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jamie. It was really insightful, and I think also something that a lot of people can take forward with them in their journeys. As Jamie mentioned, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat box. Otherwise, I'll get the ball rolling. Let's say you mentioned that compliance was below average. I was just wondering if there's any overarching themes as to the reason for that.
Great question, Renata. And one which I get asked at every every time I've presented this. So basically, so the intervention itself was world first, never been rolled out, and so there were a few. Okay, I'm going to talk about two different things here. Sorry for going around here. I'm trying to work out how to phrase this eloquently and also in the anyway. So first of all, it was the first time this had been rolled out before, so quite tricky. Some of the components were quite complex. Even some of our baseline testing, I think, so counting back, getting participants to count backwards in sevens, doing cognitive tests. I think a lot of participants found that quite confronting, especially if they had performed poorly. And so we found that the majority of those who withdrew did so before the intervention had actually really even started. So like after baseline testing. So that was one aspect that I think, and then as participants started to progress, obviously, as you could see through those examples, it did take a little bit of time to try and warm up to some of these exercises, and especially if these older adults had never performed any exercise before, and especially going straight into power training or high velocity training, which is quite complex and has the consistent movement speeds and also the it does require those high velocity movements. I think they found some of those a little bit challenging. So rather than stick it out and see if they actually progress and adapt, as we did see with a lot of other older adults, they thought it was a bit too challenging. And then especially when you start to introduce the dual tasks, like the counting, which older adults seem to be really adverse to, a lot of them. Didn't like the counting at all. It'd be one of the major complaints, but necessary for the study, of course. So I think the whole nature of the training was a bit unfamiliar, and some of them found that a little bit confronting and daunting, which was the reason for their withdrawal. Other withdrawals reasons were sickness or like the sickness to themselves or to a spouse. Had a lot of those, and then as we held it at retirement villages, you can never underestimate how they're like their own ecosystems at times. So each one was individual. Each one had their own characteristics, and all you need is a few people at one particular village to at the happy hour on Tuesday night say, I don't really like this program. I've heard this and this about it. It can kind of cause this domino effect where all of a sudden you have a string of 10 people withdrawing for no reason other than the fact that, everyone else is withdrawing. So maybe we should do that as well. So we did see a little bit of that. And I think that's, yeah, so to try and overall answer your question, it's a little bit about the nature of the retirement villages themselves, and also the fact that it was quite complex and maybe a little bit challenging and confronting to older adults who, don't like counting, don't like these type of cognitive challenges, or are inexperienced with exercise.
Thank you. I do have a question from Paul Knight, who says, thank you for the insightful talk. And do you have any thoughts on simulating design of environmental spaces to replicate these functional and cognitive exercises so as to save on the requirement of organising sessions for people to do on an ongoing basis, i.e. incorporate these activities into everyday living? Thank you.
Right. Well, I'm sure there have been other studies that have tried to simulate design. So I'm assuming this means in terms of like everyday environments, so like in your residence or something like that, rather than simulating like virtual reality. Because I think that if you're talking about virtual reality, that is probably one of the next steps. And some people have kind of tried to incorporate these dual task elements in protocols involving exergaming. Um, but in if I'm getting the question correct, but I'm interpreting it correctly, um, okay, into everyday living. Okay, I think I know exactly what this is. So I haven't really seen a lot of evidence, but I think it would be a great idea. And anecdotally, some of the participants actually told me that this idea, they weren't really familiar with the idea of dual tasking or multitasking, what it actually involved. But if you explain it as multitasking, that's pretty straightforward. And a lot of participants actually told me that because of their involvement in our program, they were trying to incorporate it into their daily lives as well. So while we can't measure that and see what effect that had on the overall responses we received and the overall performance, they did say that they were trying to integrate it more in their daily living. So, for example, while they were pouring like a cup of tea with the kettle, they were doing calf raises. So that's a form of multitasking. You're doing a motor task with some exercise. Others were others would also try to say that, when they would go for a walk, they'd be trying to remember lists. So I think there is a lot of scope to be able to incorporate this into their daily lives. And from what we heard, a lot of participants were actually doing this themselves. How you'd actually structure that into some type of intervention, I think that would require a little bit of forethought and some clever and creative design, but I think it could definitely be done.
Okay, thank you. Julie asks if you are able to provide a list of the different types of dual tasks that you included in the training. And I'd like to expand on that a little bit. How did you decide that these were the tasks that you were going to use?
Yeah, so the dual tasks were really, where did I have, oh, okay. I might, it doesn't matter. So we had like a bank of visual cognitive tasks, and also like a bank of motor tasks that we would draw on. And it was up to the trainer's discretion as to how they paired that with each of the physical exercises. So either the power training or the balance or the functional balance training. And so, for example, the bank itself would have been for the motor tasks, sorry, for the visual tasks or the cognitive task could have been about 100 pages long. And we would just, as you saw, some of the participants in those videos, they had them on a sheet laminated. So just imagine every time the trainer comes, they have a whole list of, or a stack of these laminated sheets, and you would simply try and pair those with one of the exercises. So we'd have finder words, we'd have anagrams, we'd have spot the differences, which of these circles, or even more of like concentration. So focus on this circle while you're doing the exercise, and don't let your mind wander. And then we'd also have these other challenges that we'd like a list that said, think of as many men's names as you have, as you can think of, beginning with the letter D while you're performing the exercises. It might be um, try and recall, we're going to tell you a story beforehand, and you can try and recall the story while you're doing exercises. That's more what we had for the cognitive tasks. Um, in terms of the motor tasks, we had a whole bank of those as well. So obviously, like throwing a ball to each other, trying to do, bicep curls, or you're actually doing some type of balance training. That's an additional addition of the motor task. But there were literally hundreds and hundreds of these tasks that the research team actually came up with before the
Yeah.
yeah. And what was the second part to that, Renata? Sorry.
Um, sorry.
So what was did you say you had an extension to that
I think you answered
question?
it. Yeah, I think you pretty much answered it. And my comment on that would be it's really important to get to know your clients and what their abilities are when you're doing that kind of training and using the appropriate combinations for them.
That's absolutely correct. And as I kind of mentioned earlier, it was individualized. So if participants were particularly like they didn't actually want to do the counting tasks all the time, then we try and select something that was of an equivalent difficulty, and also something that really kind of challenged similar cognitive processes, but didn't actually involve counting. And I think that was a really and the fact that we mixed it up every class as well. So participants didn't get used to the same questions. They couldn't memorize the answers. And the fact that you have so many at your disposal was pretty beneficial as well.
Right, thank you. Just a question from Tarish. She starts off saying, thank you again. For the work that you've done in your research team, especially around dementia, with being the leading cause of death in Australian women. She hopes to see this training embedded at the public primary health level and investment from our medical colleagues, but wonders where to next for you and the team.
Where to next for myself and the team? That's a great question, and thanks for these questions, by the way, because yeah, it's really encouraging the fact that you have taken so much out of it. Um, so as I mentioned before, those even you saw on the last slide, the team itself is quite large. I was a PhD student on that, so I myself have so the chief investigators on that project, I think, have moved on to different projects over time. But there is still the opportunity to revisit this whole concept of dual tasking. And in fact, I'm looking to do some of this, apply some of this dual tasking, but in more of maybe even using like virtual reality, because I think obviously it is effective, and now there's all this evidence coming out, and it is this really kind of hot topic. Everyone's talking about it. When we started this, you had to explain to people what you were doing, and they wouldn't really understand. But now there seems to be a lot more evidence and research coming out, which is really handy. So I can't really speak for the other investigators on it, but I'm looking to pursue a few different avenues of research that are trying to take this into a different context. Um, so the whole idea of use doing motor tasks at the same type of time as some type of exercise, or completing cognitive tasks simultaneously with other types of physical exercise. So, but I know that every month you see like a lot more research coming out on this. But not to say that we're not going to do any more in the future. In fact, I'm constantly in talks with my supervisor, who is Rob Daly, about what we can do next and how we can translate this and roll it out. But at the end of the day, it does really come down to funding, because this was an NHMRC funded study, so required quite a bit of money in terms of a research setting. But I did mention before that you could probably, it is probably relatively inexpensive to roll this out. And having spoken to a few people like yourself, Renata, and even other trainers and exercise physiologists, they all already incorporate this as part of their daily practice. They know that they've got this sense that it works. they've done the research to know that there are some good data to support their rationale, and they are really looking to progress this and to make this a usual part of their practice.
Thank you, Jamie. Some very insightful messages there, and some interesting times ahead, I think. I think we'll wrap it up with questions there. Just a reminder that if you're after resources for your clients, you can order these through our website. You can download them, print them, or order multiple copies that we can deliver out to you. Also highlighting some upcoming additional training that we've got. If you're in Albany next week, please join us for a grant writing and evaluation workshop. At the end of October, we'll be hosting our Falls Forum, available in person and online. And if any of you are working in the family domestic violence space, we have scheduled an awareness training workshop in November. And then we'll finish off the year with another webinar that focuses on arthritis, osteoporosis, and falls. There's always more free opportunities online through our e-learning modules, which you can access. And a reminder that we have our Remove Hazards grant applications closing soon. So that's on the 1st of November. These grants are available for health and community professionals, and they occur twice a year for you to implement community-based falls prevention programs that align with our key messages. The grants are available up to $5,000. So if you're interested, please have a look at the page and get in touch with us. Let's keep the conversation going from today. Make sure you've subscribed to our falls prevention e-news. It comes out monthly and delivered straight into your inbox. It has information about training, resources and updates that are happening in the falls prevention space in WA. And we also invite people to join our Community Falls Network, which meets quarterly. It provides professionals working in the falls prevention space across WA with an opportunity to connect with each other, to share learnings and solution in falls prevention and safety. So shoot us an email if you're interested in that program. Of course, we'd love your feedback about the workshop today and the webinar. So Rachel's popped up the link to our evaluation form. So if you could please respond to that, that would be great. We'll also provide a link in our follow-up emails together with notes and how to access the recording. A big thank you again to Dr. Jamie Tait, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.